Hello and welcome to Gardening with Ben's award-winning podcast, as voted by Grow Your Own magazine and by my followers and listeners. So if you're new to the podcast, make sure you click that subscribe button to stay up to date with all our podcasts, listen back to all our previous episodes, sit back, grab a brew and let's enjoy today's episode. Hello and welcome back to Gardening with Ben. Well, it's Sunday and it's stopped snowing now, thankfully. Hopefully it's not snowing when this podcast goes out because I've recorded it Saturday night, but hopefully the snow has stopped now for the time being, and it's my last working day today, and then I will be back at the allotment on Monday, and I'll be there for about 4 or 5 days, so hopefully I will get plenty done, and I will be creating my list on Sunday of all the jobs what need doing down there. And I'll be getting a chance to record my podcasts, because when I'm at the allotment in the week or when I'm off, I usually talk about what I've been up to down at the plot. Usually when I'm working, I'll record episodes beforehand of little gardening tips and advice and sharing them with you. And if you've not checked out my other podcast called Gardening and Allotment Tips, the link is in the description, and that's usually talking about one specific topic altogether. And yes, today's episode is all about growing potatoes in the ground. Yesterday was talking about jobs for those rainy days down at the allotment and in the garden. And yeah, each day I talk about a different episode on there, so check that one out as well. So if you enjoy this podcast, why not subscribe to that one as well, and then you get 2 episodes a day to listen to. What more could you want, from Gardening with Ben? And it's all for free as well to listen to, and you're helping me by listening to it as well. So what jobs are we going to be doing down at the allotment this week? I have so much that I need to get done on the plot this week, and I know I've got 5 days off, but it's finding time to get it all done, and my list is starting to get longer and longer now as things are progressing with the time that is coming up. And April, I set myself a mission of getting the whole of my plot repainted, all the beds, all the fencing, everything repainted, ready for the year ahead. And I've found a lot of paint in my polytunnel, because one of my jobs at the moment is cleaning my polytunnel out, because I've not done that job yet. Usually I get that done in the winter when it's raining or something like that, but it's not rained when I've been at the allotment. It's been fine, glorious weather, so I've had time to spend outside, because why would I want to be in the polytunnel when it's sunshine? I'll be outside doing work in the allotment when it's sunshine. I wouldn't want to spend it in the polytunnel. That's why I usually save it for a rainy day job, and that's what I was talking about in my podcast yesterday on my other podcast channel. And yeah, getting those jobs done, it's about prioritising around the weather and thinking about what you need to do. So obviously I want to get the whole plot painted. It's not something that I have to do, it's more of making it look nice and presentable, and also it treats the wood as well. It makes it last that little bit longer, because some of the wood I've had on my plot now, it's been there years. Some of it has it's gone rotten, but we've managed to salvage lots of it and keep it going all these years, and I've not had to replace much over these years. And maybe that's something I need to look at down the line, but while ever it keeps going, I'll keep using it and keep painting it every single year to make it look nice. So that's our main job for April. And our other main job is to get my polytunnel all cleaned out and ready, disinfected, washed, swept out, tidied, and ready to start growing everything in there. Once I've potted them, all my seedlings up, once they've all germinated, I'm just waiting for them to germinate now and get that bit bigger, and then I'll put them on into all little pots, and then once they're big enough, I'll plant them into their final growing place, which will be in my polytunnel. So I'm looking forward to that, because I've got melons growing, I've got chilies growing, I've got peppers growing, I've got tomatoes growing, I've got cucumbers growing, I've got aubergines growing. Those are all the things that I'm going to be growing inside my polytunnel. And I'll possibly talk about that in one of my episodes on my other gardening channel, what to grow in a polytunnel and what success you can have in a polytunnel as well. So if you're thinking about getting a polytunnel, make sure you listen on that channel for that episode coming up. In fact, I'm going to make a note of it now to do that episode, because I think it'll be useful for a lot of people who are thinking about growing in polytunnels and greenhouses. And it's not just them things that you can grow in polytunnels and greenhouses. You can grow so much more in there, and it's amazing how much you can actually grow in there and keep stuff growing throughout the winter period and keep gardening all the way through the winter. I don't tend to do that. I tend to shut down when it gets to October and just concentrate on the maintenance work of my plot. But now that my allotment's to a good level, I may actually continue growing through the winter this year for the first time and see how about doing it. And like I said, I've never done this myself, grown through the winter, so it would be something new for me to learn and to experiment with and get tips from other people that do grow through the winter and stuff like that. Because like I always say, I'm an amateur gardener. I don't know everything about gardening. I'm always learning every single day, and share it as I come across new stuff. I'll share it with everybody else and let them learn with me as well. And that's the best thing about gardening, learning together and gardening together and growing together and sharing together with each other what you have grown and what you've harvested and how well you've done and how rubbish you've done as well. Some stuff does absolutely rubbish, so it's good to share them failures as well, because you can learn from them and people can help you develop your gardening skills over the years as well. So that's our other job this week, tidy the polytunnel out, as well as starting to do some painting. Hopefully it's going to be a nice week. I've read that it's going to be nicer again this week. The temperature's going to get back up and hopefully we'll get some decent weather again. And another job for this week is to plant my potatoes, and I'm going to be using the trench method. I'm going to be planting them all by trench. If you've listened to my other podcast on my other platform today, you'll know there's different methods of planting them in the ground. So I'm going to be using the trench method, and also I may be planting my seed onions, what I've started from seed. I think they'll be ready for going out now and getting them in the ground and started, so we'll have to see how we get on with them. And for those of you that's followed me for a while, you will know that I tried growing onions from seed last year, and I tried growing them from set, and I grew them side by side to see which ones did the best. And I have to say the seed onions did the best, so that's what I'm trying to grow this year. I'm trying to grow a few different varieties so that we'll see which variety grows best. I've labelled them up with the variety name so that I know which variety they are. I've not just put onions, I've actually put the variety name down as well, and I've done that with all my vegetable seeds that I've sown this year. I've put all the varieties on it so that I actually know what I've grown. Usually I'll just put cabbage or I'll just put lettuce and stuff like that, but I've actually put the variety name down because sometimes you can win onto a fantastic variety, so then you will be able to try that variety again next year afterwards. So yeah, plenty to do. So that's my 4 main jobs this week, which are painting, cleaning my polytunnel out, which I'm not looking forward to, planting my potatoes and planting my onions. And then also I'm starting to redevelop my top end of my plot, which is going to take an absolute load of work to do because it's never been touched in the 17 years that I've used it. Every year I get a little bit further up my plot, and every year I keep chucking rubbish further down my plot. I'm sure some of you are the same. You keep moving the rubbish to the top of the plot, and then eventually you've got to get rid of it all. And to get rid of it all, you've either got to take it to the tip or recycle it. Whichever way, you have to get rid of it somehow. So we've got all that to do, which I'm not looking forward to. And in this new area is going to be my new herb garden, which again, I've not really grown herbs before. I've got a few little herb plants, but I've not grown them on a full scale. And on a full scale, I mean I'm actually going to build a proper herb garden. It's going to be all bricked off, it's all going to be nice, it's all going to be all different varieties of herbs. When I looked through all my seed packets the other week when I was sorting out all my seeds. I must have found about 30 different packets of herb seeds, and a lot of them are all different varieties. As you know, I get the Grow Your Own magazine and the Kitchen Garden magazine, and more often than not, you'll get about a couple of packets of herbs every episode, every magazine, and I've just been putting them all in a bag, and now I've got absolutely loads and loads of different varieties of herbs. So I'm going to make this really nice, fragrant herb area, and it not just for growing the herbs, but also just for the smell, for the bees. The bees will absolutely love it, and the insects, and yeah, just to make it a nice chilled out zone area where I can just sit back, relax, and look at the allotment. I wish. I've never had a chance to sit down yet while I've been on my plot, but one day I'll be able to just go and sit down and enjoy the allotment and enjoy the peace and quiet, because where my allotment is, it's very open and there's nothing around it whatsoever, and you can just sit and relax and enjoy it all. Now that I've put these new bird feeders on my plot, I can actually see what birds I get down at the allotment, and I'm looking forward to that. I'm not a bird watcher whatsoever, but I love to see different wildlife, and I'll be able to just sit there and see what birds come, and hopefully get some good photos as well. I do like sharing all my photos on Instagram, so if you're not following me on Instagram, go and give me a follow, Gardening with Ben. I share all my pictures on there with everybody, and yeah, everybody seems to enjoy them, and I can't believe that I've got 10.5 thousand followers. That still makes me smile every day. But yeah, thank you for every one of you that does follow me on Instagram. It does mean the world to me, and on Facebook. I've got a Facebook page as well called Gardening with Ben. If you've not followed that, go over and give it a follow. So we've got all that to do, and then I keep thinking of jobs as I'm talking on this podcast. The other day I added a pond to my plot, which I talked about in one of my episodes, and I found this pond lining. Somebody had just dumped it over the fences of the allotment, so obviously they'd had enough of it, so they thought they'd just tip it onto the allotments because somebody might want it, and thankfully I wanted it, so I claimed it. And me being me, I thought, oh, it must be damaged, it must be cracked or something like that, so I filled it up with water, and all the water stayed in. So result, and I looked online, and they're like worth £40, £50, these pond cases. I don't know what to call it. Pond mould. That's it. Pond mould. Are usually worth about £40-50. So I couldn't believe that when I looked online, and I filled it up with water, and I've managed to acquire some frog spawn to put in it. So we've got some nice frog spawn in it, and hopefully we'll be getting some froggies come summertime, and I can't wait to see them as well, because I used to hold them as a kid, like I've said before, and stroke them and throw them on my sisters. But now my sisters don't come to the allotment that much, so I won't be able to throw them on them now. But yeah, I've got lots of plans for this year for the wildlife, and I've talked about that as well quite recently. But yeah, I need to look at this pond because I haven't got any pond plants in it at the moment, and I posted it on my Instagram and Facebook recently to ask for ideas, because I don't know anything about ponds. It's all new to me, so I'm asking people for tips, and that's the thing about gardening. If you don't know, ask. People around you are more knowledgeable than you on some areas, so there's always people who are willing to help. So I've been asking about like what sort of plants I need to put in it, and what sort of plants to put round it, because obviously I want to make it look nice and around the pond. And also I've got a load of old rocks. I think it's Yorkshire stone, so I'm going to put some of that around it, because when we had the pond at home, the frogs used to hide in between the rocks and stuff like that, so they must like it inside between the rocks. It's a nice place for them to shelter away from the birds pinching them. I don't want the birds to pinch my frogs. But yeah, I'm looking forward to developing that, so we've got that to sort. So I've got so many jobs to do. I'm going to have to hire a helper to come down and help me, but we've got all that to do. And then when it gets to May time, I will be looking at getting all my netting and all my chicken wires sorted for protecting my beds and my vegetables. But that will wait until May, because I don't need to do that yet, because I'm not going to be planting anything outside that's worthy of being eaten by birds. The only thing that I'll be planting outside that the birds might eat are my onions. And if you're planting onions, make sure you net them over the top, because the birds do like to come down and pinch the tops off the onion plant. Yep, they love onion plants. Well, they try them and then they spit it out and they just nibble the tops off the tops of the onions. But yeah, if you're thinking about growing onions, make sure you net them over, because they do like to pull the onions out and also nip the tops off them. So it's going to be a very, very busy week, and then I'm on the hunt for some honeyberries. I've had a message from one of my followers that were listening to one of my podcasts, and she says that she bought a couple from Wilkinson's the previous year. So I might pop down to Wilkinson's and see what they've got. But I need to stay away from Wilkinson's, because I'll be buying stuff that I don't actually need. But yeah, I'm definitely going to get some honeyberries. I'm on the lookout for them. So if anybody's seen any recently, please do let me know what supermarket or shop they've seen them in, so that I can go and buy some for myself, because I want to go and get some. So we need to do that. And I'm on the hunt for some cheap lavender as well. The cheapest I've found is £3 so far for a pot, but if you know anywhere any cheaper, I'm always on the lookout for a bargain. So please do let me know if you find any bargain lavender, and I'll hopefully be able to plant some of them on my plot. That's the next thing on my tick list, what I want to do. I've planted my fuchsias last week, which was on my list, and they're hardy varieties, so we've got them ticked off. So next on my tick list is lavender. I don't know what's on my tick list after lavender and honeyberries. I can't think of anything, to be honest, that's high up there on the list of things to purchase. After that, I'll probably get some more summer bulbs to plant, because I want to fill my borders with summer bulbs as well. I am growing flowers, but I want summer bulbs underneath as well, because they're more than likely to guarantee to grow every year and be successful, and hopefully the bulbs and the cones will multiply and produce more. So I'll have to see about that. So we've got that to do, and then also I have got to start my feeding schedule. I've been reading up quite a bit on blueberries, because I've had blueberries for a few years now, but they don't seem to produce absolutely loads of fruit. So I've been reading up, and it says to feed them with ericaceous feed. So I've been out and bought some ericaceous feed. So I'm going to start feeding them on a weekly basis to hopefully get a fantastic production of blueberries, because blueberries are so expensive. It's unbelievable how expensive blueberries are, because they are classed as a superfruit, and like me, they must be hard to grow if people aren't managing to grow them. So we're going to start that production off with feeding them on a weekly basis. And I've also picked up some seaweed feed as well, what I'm going to start feeding all my other fruit with, because I want to help get a fantastic production. So on a weekly basis I'm going to feed them with seaweed feed, and that'll be my strawberries, it'll be my raspberries, it'll be my rhubarb and my gooseberries, what I planted. So I'm going to be feeding them on a weekly basis as well, because I want to give them the best crops that they can get. So we'll see how well they actually grow with being fed as well, because I never usually feed my plants whatsoever. I just usually let them grow and hope for the best, and I get a good production even though I don't feed them. So if I do start feeding them, just think of the production that I'm going to get from my fruit plants. I can't wait to do that, so I'm looking forward to doing that as well. So yeah, and obviously as it's starting to get drier as well a lot now, every time when I go to the allotment, one thing that I always do is I get a bucket full of water and just chuck it on my rhubarb plant. And yes, I will water it every single day with a bucket of water, because rhubarb is one of the fastest growing fruit or vegetable, whichever one you want to call it. It's one of the fastest growing, and it is mainly made up of water. Water is one of the main things in it. So I give it a bucket full of water every single day, and it does really, really well. And I get some fantastic crops from it. And I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that I'm going to get my first harvest this week. I've not been down to the allotment since the snow, so I'm hoping the snow hasn't killed it off in the cold weather, because rhubarb doesn't like cold weather, because obviously it goes dormant in winter time because it thinks it's time to go to bed. So hopefully the cold weather hasn't made my rhubarb die and wilt and go back to bed. So I'm hoping that it's all still alive. Obviously it'll grow again, but I'm just hoping that the cold weather hasn't shocked it and killed it. Well, not killed the roots, because the roots won't die, but hopefully not killed the fruit what was growing on the plant. So yeah, it's going to be a very, very busy week. I will be setting my alarm clock for 5:30 in the morning to go to the allotment, possibly for about 6:30, 7 o'clock, because now that it's getting lighter earlier and staying lighter longer, I tend to go to the plot nice and early in the morning so that I can spend a long time there. So I'll be spending more hours there now that it's getting lighter, and hopefully we can get all these jobs done. And when I'm down on the allotment, I just enjoy listening to my radio and cracking on and doing all the things that I love doing down at the allotment. Without my allotment, I don't know what I'd do. I'd just be sat at home all day, possibly recording podcasts all day, but I wouldn't be able to talk about what I'm getting up to on the allotment. I'd have to find a new hobby or a new subject to talk about. But yeah, it's going to be a good week this week. I can certainly feel that for sure. So I hope that you've enjoyed this podcast, and I hope that you've learnt something from it. And if you are new to this podcast, please do make sure you click that subscribe button to stay up to date with all our podcasts. Give it a share on your Instagram stories. If listening on Spotify, you can click that share button and share it to your Instagram stories. But remember to tag me in it. I always love to see who's shared it. And yeah, as always, thank you for following me and thank you for supporting me. Until next time, remember, keep smiling, keep gardening, and keep listening to Gardening with Ben's podcasts. So thank you for listening to today's episode of Gardening with Ben. We hope that you've enjoyed this episode. Remember to do click that subscribe button to stay up to date with all our podcasts. Feel free to share them on your Instagram stories so that it spreads the word about my podcast and we get lots more listeners. Feel free to check out my social media sites, Facebook and Instagram as well, Gardening with Ben, and also my YouTube channel, to stay up to date with all my handy videos, how-to videos, and sharing my tips and advice. And feel free to check the link as well in the description for my Gardening with Ben t-shirts. Lots of funny gardening design t-shirts in there for you to purchase at great prices too. So thanks again, and as always, remember, keep smiling and keep gardening.